Working as an FBI special agent was my dream job. My whistleblowing was apolitical and in the spirit of upholding my oath. Nonetheless, the FBI cynically elected to close ranks and attack the messenger.
The FBI will crush you. This government will crush you and your family if you try to expose the truth about things that they are doing that are wrong. We are all examples of that.
Joining us now are Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle. Thanks for joining us, fellas.
FBI whistleblowers Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle both join us now. Gentlemen, so glad to have you on the program. Thank you for your testimony.
We need more folks like you, and I'm sure more people going to be from your background are going to be giving you guys more intel as you're sharing that with the rest of us. We can kind of see that this is becoming normal for them to be held accountable, because I think especially an institution that we pay their salaries, they need to be held accountable.
I think a lot of people do share our beliefs and convictions. I think they just aren't at the point that Steve and I and others have gotten to. They're too afraid.
Thank you so much for being a guest here on PBD Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
How big is that bloody flag that Steve's got? It's a stone wall of his house. Lots of love, guys. Thanks very much for joining us.
Steve Friend, Garrett O'Boyle. Thank you for being with us this morning. More importantly, thank you for speaking out. We appreciate it.
You're in the information age, but facts are in short supply. Reject the noise, ask bold questions, and pursue the truth with FBI whistleblowers and founding suspendables Garrett O'Boyle and Steve Friend. This is the American Radicals Podcast.
It is the American Radicals Podcast on a Tuesday, starting off a brand new week for us here on rumble.com/amradpod. We saw the Kyle Seraphin show rated in to ours, the American Radicals Podcast, which comes to you Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, 10:30 Eastern Time. Grateful to have you with us. Make sure that you smash the thumbs up, follow our channel. We're trying to grow here, folks. And also, definitely 100% subscribe to the audio format of the podcast on anything like iTunes, Spotify, iHeart. Those are where there's so many listeners out there. We're just trying to radicalize as many people as we possibly can today. And today is no exception. Today, we're talking about big boy rules, which was my rule of thumb for the 100 days that I had to be an acting boss at the FBI. Day one, I said, big boy, big girl rules, do your job. I'm going to go do mine. And that was a revolutionary concept. So today, we're going to talk about how Europe is really big mad at the United States for the changes we're seeing at the Department of Defense. The federal government is laying off some of the workers because we expect them to actually be efficient. We're actually questioning whether or not they are efficient. Elon Musk putting out an email saying, what is it that you did last week? And federal employees freaked out about that. Donald Trump going to war against Maine. Can we swap them out for Greenland? There's a train heist problem apparently on the West Coast. Haven't seen that reported very much. And Garrett was excited to hear about it. And then also we got to spend some time on the fact that the NSA is sending group chats around about their kinks and fetishes. So a lot to get to today. Excited to be here for the brand new week. Excited to have Garrett along for the ride. He's a big timer now. Apparently he's broken through on the socials at GOB Actual. He's putting things out there that are catching the attention of all the media that hit me up this morning, Garrett, asking to connect with you. So
does
we
that
are not
make
worthy.
sense, Steve? We must live in the same house or something, you would think.
Contrary to what it appears here, I cannot actually give Garrett a high five.
Hey, yeah. Oh,
yeah, wrong way, brother.
Wrong
way. We got to get better.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't even know what to say. I just missed a call from one of my lawyers. I've got a congresswoman calling me in about an hour, so I've got a hard out.
We'll get it done. I got to get you in a mood though, because
I'm in a mood, Steve. Oh, I'm in a mood.
Take that you know that when the pot is boiling, you can see the first few bubbles coming to the surface. I see this all the time because I make ramen noodles for my kids multiple times a week. We're going to get it to boil over here because are you aware that there's a new movie coming out on Amazon about G20?
No, I don't even know what
the movie was made in preparation for Kamala Harris's presidency. So let's watch a little bit of the preview for it, Garrett, and get you set up for today.
Madam President.
Oh, damn. Now I gotta go save the world.
The 20 most powerful world leaders together. Going dark in 3, 2, 1. To the government's watching, I've taken the G20 by force. When we launch Project Deepfake, we will reset the world's financial markets. You gotta read the words exactly as written. Quick beige fox. Quick beige fox. Quick beige fox. Now we control the narrative.
My husband and kids are missing. We have to find them.
If you want to live, you'll follow my lead.
Now you're Captain America.
Oh,
That was quite well done.
oh, Steve.
Now you're in the mood, sir. Now you're in the mood. I do have to point out the fact that how come every time there is a black protagonist, they have to play the hip hop music?
Because they're racist. Come on. They will gaslight you and say, "Oh, you're racist just because you're a white man," when in fact they're the ones who are racist. They're culturally appropriating music and whatever else. But also, she didn't have nearly enough wine to be Madam President. I mean, come on.
Not believable at all. That was the least believable part of it. Not the fact that a 60-year-old woman was putting down dudes who were 250 with fully automatic AR platforms. Okay, I set the mood because I wanted to start out with the DoD and the problems with the world. Like the G20 summit sort of seemed like the nice connection. I see what I'm doing there as a professional
I
broadcaster.
reject your question, Steve.
Well, there's going to be some changes to the status quo. We have new person in charge over at the Department of Defense. Pete
He's just a
Hegseth.
Fox News host, Steve. Come on.
Big boy rules in effect here. So that comes from the Politics Brief. Pentagon Chief Hegseth explains why status quo no longer flies at the DoD. You were a member of the DoD for a number of years, Garrett. How are your feelings here? These are the quotes from Pete Hegseth. Quote, Joe Biden gave lawful orders. A lot of them are really bad. It's unfortunate how they eroded our military, ideological, COVID mandates. President Trump has given another set of lawful orders, and they will be followed. If they're not followed, and all these orders are in keeping with the Constitution and norms inside the military. Another quote, he said that one thing people haven't noted yet, which I'll share, is we're going to take those 3-star billets, like the 3-star generals, but traditionally they've been 2-star billets over time. There's been lots of inflation of the ranks. We're going to return those billets to 2 stars. We're going to shrink the size of our headquarters units because of the inflation of military generals. World War II required 7 4-star generals. Now we have 44.
Oh my goodness. That really puts it into perspective.
You were an enlisted guy. Was the inflation of ranks rampant in the enlisted ranks as well at the time? I think it's pretty obvious that we have more admirals now than boats in the Navy.
Yeah, dude, that is crazy. I didn't know those numbers. Shame on me, but that really does put it into perspective because that's insane. You had 7 in World War II and you got 44 for what? How many world wars do we have going on at once right now? Because you would think you'd have, I don't know, 10 in each theater or something at this rate. This is ridiculous. But in my experience, I would not say that the enlisted ranks were inflated like that. And I wonder if that's just a structural issue because a squad is a squad, whether it's an infantry platoon or a frickin' chef platoon. Chef. I use that word very loosely, Steve. Very, very loosely. But
MREs don't require much.
this is dude, that actually reminds me of an hilarious story. Do you know what a mermite is? Have you ever heard this term? It's a green, or at least in my time, it's like a green cooler, but it's used to keep things warm instead of cold. And sometimes, usually when you're out in the field near the end, well, like the last day, you would get one hot meal of chow. But there was more than one time where instead of having the hot chow in the mermites, they just had MREs stacked in mermites. And it's like, why are you putting them in a mermite? Why are you toying with my soul this way? I've had MREs for a month and now you just stick them in a mermite? Give me a break. But I digress. But to answer your question in short, no. In my experience, the enlisted ranks were not bloated like that.
So the adjoining piece that I have for this, I've actually got 3 pieces. They're all connected because Europe's going to get brought in here. That's the G20 connection here.
Burn it down, Steve. They're going to kidnap our Madam President
Man, did
or her
we ever
family.
avoid that one? So this comes from the Washington Post because democracy dies in darkness, and this about cutting back on the government. And before I start, I do have to correct the record here, Garrett. We were talking offline. The Washington Post "Democracy dies in darkness" is no longer a motto. I still will use it because it's still on the top of the newspaper, but they have a new motto. It's called "Riveting Storytelling for All of America."
That's that's a horrible motto. And 2, can we just change it to Jeff Bezos is still trying to destroy the Nelson family's life? I mean, that's just as good.
Equal number of syllables as well. So this comes from Washington Post. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has ordered senior leaders at the Pentagon and throughout the U.S. military to develop plans for cutting 8% from the defense budget in each of the next 5 years.
I'm here for that. I like this. I like this idea.
The budget directive follows a separate order from the Trump administration seeking lists of thousands of probationary DoD employees, because if you're probationary, you can be fired. There are some certain exemptions, 17 of them, I guess they were able to itemize out. The list is notable, and this is again so WAPO. The list is notable too for what it omits. European Command, which has been a major role in overseeing the U.S. support for Ukraine during its 3-year war with Russia. But if that's coming to an end, Garrett, I don't see why we have to continue to fund that initiative. That seems
No.
irresponsible. It's almost like bureaucracy just always grows.
Yes, that's exactly what it is like because Steve, you mentioned that you're a professional and I'm starting to see the fruits of your labor because you first brought us a story of 44 generals when we had 7 during the arguably the worst time in modern history because there was a massive world war going on. We had 7. Now we have 44. Now you bring us this that panic, everybody panic because what, we're pulling out of Europe? I mean, okay, we've been there long enough. Do they really need us there still? Do we really need a base in Baumholder, Germany anymore with people living in old Nazi barracks? I don't know that we do.
What's curious about this situation where we're sort of withdrawing from Europe, and it becomes "you're not breaking up with me, we're breaking up with you"
Yes,
type of
because we
situation.
hate you, actually.
Because they're really, really upset that we're pulling back on this, and yet the Politico reports that this new chancellor of Germany is saying that they need to have independence from Trump's America. Okay, I mean, follow through on that threat. It's that whole Willy Wonka, like, don't, please, stop, you can't. Uh, this German chancellor. His name is Friedrich Merz.
Friedrich, yeah.
Quote, "My absolute priority will be to strengthen Europe as quickly as possible so that step by step we can really achieve independence from the USA." Well, go for it, Frederick. "I never thought I would have to say something like this on a television program, but after Donald Trump's statements last week at the latest, it is clear that the Americans, at least this part of the Americans, this administration, are largely indifferent to the fate of Europe." I think our entire country, Garrett, was based on the premise that a whole bunch of people didn't want to be part of that Europe anymore. And they got on a bunch of boats knowing they were going to land in the wilderness where there wasn't anything at all. And it was worth it to them, knowing that probably they were going to lose some of their kids along the way. It was still worth it. So, Crimea River, Friedrich Merz, we don't want to be part of your conflicts. And why don't you pony up and pay for your own defense?
Yeah, Friedrich, yeah, you must pay for your own defense. Finally, yeah. Uh, I- what? Okay, I got a lot here because you got Donald Trump and the administration getting duped into thinking that this incoming administration is somehow conservative. Guess what? Newsflash, they aren't. They're Nazis. Well, okay. I might have overstepped there. They're not Nazis per se, but they're not freedom-loving conservatives either. So I just, you know what, Germany and Europe, go after yourself, okay? It's been long enough. We've been funneling hundreds of millions of dollars to you for actually, it's got to be trillions by now. It's got to be over since World War II. So, bye. I mean, look, I like knockwurst as much as anybody from Wisconsin or Germany, and beer. But guess what? If I want the authentic Oktoberfest, I'll go down to the Kegel Inn in Milwaukee. So, see ya. I don't care about your news. I don't care about your country. I don't care about your socialism. I don't care that you hate us, and you don't get our money anymore. So go ahead and act like you're breaking up with us. It doesn't faze me.
The
Goodbye.
Germans are passing laws that say if you say something on the internet that they don't like, that you can be put in jail.
I
So
mean,
I think we're pretty much standing on our principles on that one from an ideological perspective. I mean, and it occurred to me last episode we were talking about the conflict in Ukraine, because apparently Germany is very concerned that we continue to fund that. That it's not like they're trying to maybe weaken us in any way, but there was the debate about who's the good guy and the bad guy between Donald Trump and Vladimir Zelensky. And because we had to dump $200 billion into that bleep hole country and its conflict, and as retaliation because Donald Trump said some very mean things, and Donald Trump's very orange,
and
and
mean. He's
that
so mean.
we, in the bastion of liberty and freedom, they blocked True Social. You know what I mean? A free speech platform. I think we just need to eject from the entire continent, get back to the roots of why we started this whole country, because we don't fundamentally agree at our core on certain principles, like you can say whatever you want.
Yep.
Let's go to the federal government and the workforce, because
Mm.
a judge has now cleared the way for
Uh-oh.
the reductions in force to begin. That's I love that. The riffs. I mean, the firings, the layoffs.
Yeah.
the
Reduction in force.
This is Catholic Vote, but it's pretty widely reported, and there's been other examples of multiple different agencies. But this is for the USAID staff reductions. A couple pieces here. This is a district judge. His name is Carl Nichols. He lifted a temporary block originally imposed a couple weeks ago. The move allows the president and the Department of Government Efficiency, the DOGE, to reduce USAID's funding and their global workforce. And this is a quote from the judge. Quote, in the president's view, the United States foreign aid industry is not aligned with the American interest, and in many cases is antithetical to American values. So that would necessitate that the president gets to or exercises Article 2 powers to not fund things that are in the demise of the country. That's in his opinion. So as a result of that, and this was reported at the Blaze, the personnel are being furloughed or suspended and then eventually eliminated. 1,600 positions have actually been eliminated from USAID. They placed all personnel at USAID with the exception of designated personnel responsible for mission critical functions, core leadership, and specifically designated programs on administrative leave. So all the non-essential people who work for the government, who the taxpayers pay to do a non-essential job, they're on leave. That actually went into effect on Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. They're also eliminating 1,600 positions at the USAID. And
Good.
I think that that's a fundamentally good thing, because I've never understood the argument. Make the argument for me, make it publicly in front of the American taxpayers that we have to have these jobs available when their roles are non-essential.
Yeah, I think 1,600 from USAID getting dismantled essentially is just the start, because the whole place should be dismantled, especially after what we're already learning coming out of that pit of vipers. And I don't know, man. I feel quite fired up today, and I kind of am in a just I don't care mood, because cry me a freaking river, USAID employees. Your jobs never were essential. They never should have existed. No taxpayer dollar should have ever gone to you. And what are you're gonna complain because you can't buy groceries? Hey, get in line, because it's been 29 months for us. So I don't know. Am I being too verbose? Maybe. I'm not sure. Have I just grown a giant callus around my soul? I think in some ways, probably. But I don't care. I don't care. Destroy all of those positions. USAID, guess what? You're just the start. We're going to keep coming, and we're going to dismantle more and more and more and more, because this is what we voted for. So I don't know. Sign up for freaking SNAP and EBT, and guess what? We got new rules for that now too. You got some more employment rules you got to abide by, and I'm waiting for the drug tests to come in.
The argument in favor of keeping the funding and the money flowing to USAID, and we know why. It's because it funds all these NGOs and all these leftist programs. But it first started with, it's always emotional, right? Oh, well, if we don't allow this giant laundering operation to continue to operate, then people in some distant country, which you can't identify in a map, are going to starve. And people were like, well, we have people that are struggling now. We have people on SNAP benefits here in America. That doesn't resonate with a large share of people who don't live in the ivory city of Washington, D.C. So then they went and they said, well, we got to personalize it more now because they care about Americans, right? So they'll care about American workers, right? So they'll show you the sob stories of the people being walked out and losing their jobs. And unfortunately for them, the people that are getting walked out do jobs that are non-essential. They're non-essential people. I mean, you might see that they might think their job is important, but their job just isn't worth doing. And then when they try to defend it, you have like these crying millennial types. They're talking about like, at my job at USAID, I was researching cancer as it pertained to LGBTQIA rainbow kamikaze plus matters because the cancer probably affects their bodies differently. And we're just like, no, I don't feel bad for you. If
Right.
you have a skill set, you should probably try that in the private sector. I mean, caution, Ghostbusters, they expect results, whereas you just have an endless fund of government money coming and justifying your position. That's no longer going to be the case here.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the Ghostbusters, as one of their bullet points, wouldn't be we drank a case of Ecto Cooler. It would be we captured some ghosts and we banished them because they are actually doing work, like you said, expected results. They had them, and for me, Steve, again, it goes back to COVID. Of course, it goes back to COVID. Your job was never essential, so don't cry me a river on 60 Minutes now, because the mask is getting pulled off, and now people are hopefully continuing to wake up and see, oh, you shut down my small business because you said it wasn't essential, while meanwhile you got to go home for the last 4 freaking years and work from home, and now your job doesn't exist because in fact your job was never essential. I mean, it just I, I don't know, dude. I'm over it.
USAID angle, like the foreign aid, the way that it's portrayed, it does resonate with some people who think we should just be involved in the world and they're downtrodden. We should just borrow money on the backs of our kids and grandkids to help people that will never see or influence us, right? That there's an actual global worldview when it comes to that. But it doesn't resonate with a lot of people. And that's why it started to fail, which I do think it's interesting to see these communists take the 20 side of every 80-20 issue. I mean, you could maybe say it's the 10 side of every 90-10 issue because that didn't work. The stories didn't work about the lost aid. The stories certainly didn't work about the lost personnel. I can't wait for them to take the next story, which is how they're laying off 6,000 IRS workers while we're in
Can we
tax
make it?
season.
Can we make it like
I want
70,000?
I want to see this defense come out. We just have to have all these IRS workers.
Uh huh.
Now, I found the story over at the Blubber, which is unusual whales. And it is funny because it just makes me laugh. So I'll throw it up for a minute. Um, IRS to lay off 6,000 employees. Yeah, that's a good start, right? IRS
Yes.
laying these folks off. Following an order from President Trump directing government agencies to reduce staff, the decision to cut thousands of probationary workers. Again, you don't need a reason to do that. It's part of the deal. You sign up, say you're on probation. We could fire you for any reason, including if an acting boss gets big mad that you didn't wear a blazer when you go to an initial appearance and you're an FBI agent, not to maybe further her own career and or ambitions, because firing somebody apparently is a way that get promoted in the FBI.
Yep.
But I digress. The decision to cut
True
thousands
story,
of
folks. By the way.
in the middle of tax season was previously reported. So now you're going to have media saying like, well, we're not going to be able to collect the taxes. And everybody in America, and the 90% at least, was going to be like, good. I mean, the timing, I have to give a hat tip to the timing of this, as we are
Yeah.
now in that time of year.
I love it because the IRS. I mean, okay, here it is, right here. The other day, I pulled this coin up, this amazing gift that I got, and as I was thinking about that coin, I think, I don't know if I mentioned it, but I think that I may have that day in school. My kids were learning about that era and money and things of this nature. So the timing was real interesting. But I thought, you know what, I need to go a little deeper and refresh kind of my memory and my understanding and my knowledge of that passage that says, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, and unto God that which is God's. And so I dug up an old sermon about it from one of my favorite pastors, John MacArthur, and I'm listening to it, and he's really talking about idol worship and taxes, because at the time when he did this, I want to say it's like in the 80s, there was some new law that happened here where churches were no longer as exempt from paying taxes as they once were. And there was a big dust up in the evangelical community about what to do, and do you pay your taxes, whatever. And I just think, because he was talking about how in our own country, in the principles that we were founded on, we hire people and give them guns, and they will come think of this, Steve. As you know, they are federal investigators, and they have a gun, and they will come to your door with the authorization to use deadly force if they must, to force you to pay your taxes. That's where we are, and we've been there for a long time. So to roll back a couple thousand jobs in the IRS, where this is a good start. Again, with just like with the USAID and some of these other positions, let's stop spending so many tax dollars on the backs of future generations of Americans, and let's try to shrink government. I mean, the first time in my life we have a president, an administration who's saying this is out of control. And even look at Republicans and the things they vote for and the things they pass and the things they want to spend money on. By no means are we even like 1990s Bill Clinton level fiscally conservative, but we are off to a good start.
We had a request come in from the chat. Garrett, I normally have an outline here, but I've been pestered because you're the big timer right now. Can you just give us a good 90 seconds on the fact that there's been a lot of shredding of documents? Just whatever you can, because I want to do that to the benefit of the American Radicals podcast audience first. You all get the right of first refusal before we go and talk to other media.
Certainly. I mean, I saw this yesterday on Twitter. Somebody tweeted in response to one of these tweets about me or us or whatever, because I don't look at this as like a me. Oh, I got this late breaking information. You guys knew this. I shared this with you guys, and I'm sure you're hearing a lot of the same type of info coming out of the head shed there and in the FBI. I don't think anybody's really surprised by this, but somebody said, "Hey, these guys share this type of thing a couple times a week, going back for months and months and months on the AMRAD podcast." And it's true, we do. When I said to Benny Johnson, and then Michael Schellenberger followed up last night about it, that coming out of the FBI, I heard from someone in a position to really know that they have these standalone servers, and I don't know what's on them. I don't know if they knew or if they weren't comfortable sharing. I'm leaning towards they probably didn't want to share everything, because maybe they're like, maybe some of this is classified. I don't know. I wasn't even told if it's classified servers or not. I'm going to assume that probably yes, but they're separate from the main FBI system. And really, since the election, people have been hard at work trying to destroy stuff. I don't know the content of what's on there. I can only surmise. I can only speculate based on our training and experience, as we like to say, of the type of things that are on there. But it shouldn't come as a shock that the intelligence community has servers like this. I mean, it really shouldn't, because on one hand, you're trying to thwart foreign actors from hacking into your systems. We know going years back that the FBI systems have been hacked before, or government systems have been hacked, where foreign enemies are getting social security numbers and all sorts of info about government employees, and then they're putting that stuff out there or doing whatever. So it really shouldn't come as a shock to anybody that these things exist. And I think in the era that we live in, where we talk about it here all the time, we're living in a cold civil war, and we essentially have two opposing factions, and a big part of that is government. Most people in government, as we have talked about relatively recently, are opposed to what's going on. This is why you see things like FBI agents refusing legal orders and filing anonymous lawsuits, because they are dug in like a tick. And so is it really a surprise that there are people in the FBI who have access to information that are on these standalone servers and they're going to destroy it? I don't think it's even really that much of breaking news, to be honest.
I would presume that that's been going on, right? And you would hope that people that are in a position to know would bring it forward. But as I said to you and the world last night, Garrett O'Boyle has continued to do more from the outside of the FBI than the 14,000 agents on the inside. And while we're on that subject, I think it's a pretty good transition for this email request that went out over the weekend. And then there was some pushback on it. Now there's further second chances to this. The email that Elon Musk put to all the federal workers over the weekend, it was basically a demand on them. The backstory of it is that he tweeted out that all federal employees were going to be asked to report, quote, what they got done last week. And the failure to reply would be a resignation from the job. Shortly afterward, federal employees received a 3-line email telling them to share approximately 5 bullets of what you accomplished last week. And they also had to CC their manager on it. So there's a certain level of accountability to it. I did get a kick out of the fact that the due date was midnight of last night, which means that 80% of the federal workforce spent all day yesterday coming up with their 5 bullet points, of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was some pushback as it was reported, and I think misreported. I was even on a program yesterday where they were talking about, well, their State Department, the FBI, Department of Defense, their leadership, who are considered to be, Trump allies, devotees, they immediately pushed back and said, "Do not comply." So now we have the rift that, at long last, the media's wanted. The House of Mar-a-Lago is feuding inwardly, right? Well, no, there's just concern that so many federal workers who work with classified material are retarded, and they would say what they did that was classified. So if you work with classified material in the FBI, you can't really communicate that directly to Elon Musk. He has to actually have a need to know the specifics of what you're working on, which was really the holdup to it. So that was this piece here.
Even this right here, Steve. Look, I've been read out for quite some time. Okay, but I still have a brain that functions, I don't know, probably 20% less than it used to, in fairness, with all the stressors that have been added to it. But in my unclassified email, bullet point, did a 302, which for those who don't know, that's basically a police report, 302 on a classified case that I'm working on. I mean, come on. This is not difficult stuff. Elon even said, like, just about anything will suffice. We're basically looking for a pulse here. Do you respond to email? Are you a real person? That's what we're after.
How many of these guys who think they're secret agents put like just blacked out lines as bullet points before they would
Yes,
send them,
yes.
right? Like, you're not
Redacted.
entitled to that information. Redacted. But because of the pushback, because of the mass confusion, at least according to CBS News, big J journalists here at CBS, he gives another chance to the workers to justify their jobs. And they do that like it's some sort of pejorative. You should have to justify your job because of the bloat that's been exposed even within the first month. The fact that all these people are doing things that aren't worth doing, to put aside the fact that a lot of it is actually countering the American people's will, or is directly working in contravenance to what we want done or to our freedom and our liberties. You're working against that. But I'm just saying, like, the people that have jobs that are push this pile of paper to that side of the desk, that's what they do essentially all day long. So the quote from Elon Musk is, "Subject to the discretion of the president, they will be given another chance." He said that yesterday evening. "Failure to respond a second time will result in termination." So it's not even a resignation, it's a termination, which would be on your permanent record, Garrett. That'd be bad.
Oh,
The
no.
first deadline came and went with much confusion among an already anxious workforce after several federal agencies, some led by prominent Trump loyalists, told staff to ignore the emails. Again, it's because they were concerned that their staff were so retarded they would send classified information over an unclassified network. So they have a second chance, but there's not a lot of clarity on when the deadline of that is. You should probably come up with 5 bullet points of what you did in any given week pretty easily.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what your practice was. I'm kind of an old school guy. I'm not really big on the tech. I had a handwritten list, a to-do list that I would write for myself every Friday, right before I went home was the last thing I did. Things that I know that I got to hit the ground running on Monday. I want to get these things done next week. And I'm a list guy, so checking it off, it's very psychologically pleasing. Just
Oh,
check,
it
check,
is.
check.
And I similarly had a basically like a notebook right at my desk, and I would write the things. And you probably know this just on the interactions we've had, the time we've spent together. Not necessarily the most orderly type of guy, but when you got stuff swimming around in your brain, you got to get it. You got to get it down. And for me, it's same. I tried putting it in a document, on my computer, but then it would get lost in the mess of whatever else is on my desktop, which I had to clean up quarterly because I would just save it there and move on to the next thing. So I had this notebook and I would write, okay, I gotta meet with the CHS, I gotta write up this report, I gotta write this, whatever. And same, I actually, not almost, I think I liked having the list because of getting to scratch off what you did. And I don't know, as you know, Steve, your time in the FBI, what are people doing, dude? They're waiting, like we talked about not too long ago, for the Wichita Eagle. Hey, there was a newspaper at the door when you came in. They want to hang out by the water cooler or the coffee machine and just muck it up. And look, I could do that with the best of them. And oftentimes in the morning we would talk about personal life or whatever was on our mind. And thankfully I had some guys around me. One of them, he keeps in touch. He was a TFO, and we would talk about our faith or what the sermon at our churches were on or whatever for a little bit in the morning. Yeah, that's fine. That helps with camaraderie, but you got to get to work at some point. And you got 5 days a week at a minimum, or typically at a minimum, unless you got one of those 12 or 14 federal holidays, whatever they're up to. But people are freaking out about this because they are so used to doing literally nothing that they're like, oh crap, what do I write? And you mentioned it, they spent all day yesterday trying to come up with what they worked on. And by and large, that's true. And you got people who are just sycophants, whether they're the FBI or USAID or wherever they are, and they think, oh, I did some good work, but you know what? Instead of swimming upstream against the powers that be, even though I was top 3, I had to move on. Okay, what was the good work you did ever in your career? I'm fired
I
up
mean,
today, Steve. I told you.
that was the whole discussion that was going on about appointment of Kash Patel and then Dan Bongino as the deputy director. Well, they don't have the requisite experience. I mean, you could make an argument one way or another, but to me, the people that are making an argument of being, I'm an insider. I was with the FBI for 20 plus years. I was at a position of leadership and authority. I was like top 5 in the chain. That's a confession that you stood by and did nothing, or
Exactly.
were actually complicit in the weaponization. But I want to talk about how Donald Trump dunked on the governor of Maine. Can we do
I
that?
love it.
Because I, I,
This
I
is
think we
so
need to get a nice laugh in here as we're moving on into the second half of the show. Uh, this is this conflict that's been going on about the funding that's going to be derivative of girls and boys having to play together in the same sport, and Maine is going to hold the line and see you in court, and the
yeah.
president wasn't having any of it.
CAA has complied immediately, by the way. That's good. But I understand Maine. Is Maine here, the governor of Maine? Well, are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
We are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good. I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one.
I love it. I love it. I mean, over the weekend we were by my in-laws, and my father-in-law mentioned this. I hadn't seen it yet, and he pulled it up, and I was like, yes, this is fantastic. No longer do you have a worthless sack of air falling down the steps to Air Force One, or not able to string together one coherent sentence, even if he's reading it off a teleprompter. You have someone who has been through the worst weaponization of just about anybody. And he was a former president, and now he's the president again. Let's not forget, nearly assassinated a couple times, and he's not taking your crap. And this is what we voted for. This is what we want. And so, yeah, come on, bring it, Maine, you freaking losers.
And that's one limited issue with the dudes who feel pretty playing against girls. And then I kind of went down a rabbit hole on the state of Maine, because I think we should probably swap it out for Greenland. I mean, they're close enough, right? Because I found this piece about the drug industry in the state of Maine. There's an upcoming documentary about it. I want to play the trailer for it, as long as we're doing some trailers today. But not safe for work warning, there might be some spicy language here, guys, but I do think it's worth showing, because I want to alert attention to everything is not great in the state of Maine.
I'm going to tell you a story. And it's going to sound crazy. But the long talk, the more it's going to make sense. Chinese mafia have taken over rural Maine. We call that triad weed. It does smell like weed here, and when you're hot on the trail of Johnny Woo, it's going to smell like weed. A little bit of lead paint, it's good for you. Is it a commercial marijuana grow or just a recreational?
Yeah, are you guys just doing upgrades, or are you turning the power off for this place? Oh, because it's an illegal marijuana grow.
This location played host to one of the biggest human trafficking operations that we've encountered. He came here quite recently from the People's Republic of China, where he was formerly employed as an organ harvester for the CCP. These guys think that they're going to come into Maine, our home state. My message to them, if they're watching, is a simple one. Fuck you.
Not in my small town, damn it.
It's called Triad Weed is the name of this upcoming documentary. And while I get your thoughts on it, I found something else, which was, because this Maine governor who's really going to hold the line, I'll see you in court. Maybe she should worry about the illegal Chinese immigrants who are growing a bunch of illegal narcotics inside of her state. So here's a map, an actual overlay map, Garrett, of the number of illegal grows that have been identified in the state of Maine.
Wow. Of all places. I don't know much about the growing of marijuana, but I wouldn't have thought that Maine would have a good enough climate for it, but apparently they do. Maybe they got some of the dankest weed you can find. But this makes me think of the Cold Civil War. While we are fighting a Cold Civil War, we have a legitimate war going on. And okay, sure, we're not in Korea with millions of Chinese running over the nearest hill, but make no mistake that this is a war. China knows it. Do we? I think maybe some realize that we're in the thick of a legitimate war, but they're coming here. They're intentionally poisoning Americans with drugs or whatever else, and they want us to fail. They want our government to fail. They want our people to fail. They want us to be divided. And whether it's weed or fentanyl, they will use any means to try to destroy their enemy. That's us. And where we are as a nation, I don't know. I don't have the roadmap, Steve, for how we come together in unity. I don't know even that we can. I think it's going to be a difficult period yet. And the subversion in government doesn't help. The subversion in society doesn't help. And then you have foreign actors subverting like this, doing. I mean, I don't know who this guy is, but hats off to him. He's got more than 5 bullet points to point to. He's doing his own investigation to find illegal marijuana grows in Maine, of all places. And he's doing better work than the governor of Maine, surely, because she wants men to play in women's sports. I mean, how do you fix it, Steve? I wish I had the answer.
I wonder what the marijuana lobby is in the state of Maine also. It's probably worth digging into a little bit. All right, you want to talk about some train heists? Because this is pretty cool. And I found this is from the Los Angeles Times, and the Los Angeles Times is like their online presentation is like full screen. So I just have a giant picture of a railroad train. Okay. um, so I'll take this back down and we'll have to keep it off screen for now. Um, because we're apparently back in the 1870s. I mean, we are wearing masks again,
I
like
love it.
banditos robbing trains. So as long as we're talking about the states being completely broken from East Coast to West Coast now, we'll take it over to California. New sneakers release may have touched off at least some of the recent incidents of these train heists. This is from Arizona, actually. Thieves allegedly cut the air brakes on a BNSF freight train a couple weeks back, and they unloaded about 2,000 pairs of unreleased Nikes that were worth $440,000.
Whoa.
Shoes are really expensive.
No kidding.
Thieves are sometimes tipped off to valuable shipments by Confederates working at the warehouses or the trucking companies. And other times they simply look for containers with high security locks because they see the locks from the Air Jordans and they know something in there is valuable. And then they cut with a bolt cutter or with some sort of a sawzall. Once the desired loot is found, the thieves alert follow vehicles which track the train. The stolen goods are tossed off the train after it comes to a halt. The cargo is then loaded into box trucks or hidden in a nearby brush for them to come back and get later. All right, this is the data on these high level train heists that are going on in 2025 America. There were at least 65,000 railroad cargo thefts last year.
Dang. Where has this story been?
That's over 1,000 a week.
Dude, part of me is like, yeah, let's go. Train robbers. I mean, this is a young kid's favorite reenactment role here. Who's going to be the robber today? Let's go rob a train. I mean,
you look like Jesse Owens, very much so. So the 65,000 in a year, and that's a 40% increase from the prior year. So it's a huge jump. The thefts, which are typically classified as burglaries, and this is where you get into the statistical manipulations that goes on here, because it's not a robbery, it's not an armed robbery. I mean, is it a violent crime or is it a property crime? And burglary doesn't look that bad on paper. I mean, you have a jump of burglaries, people tend to think, oh, kids are out for the summer, they're breaking into houses when people are working, or maybe it's around the holiday season, people are snatching up what's underneath the tree, whatever have you had there. So they're characterized as burglaries because they don't involve confronting the victims, which robberies tend to be. The total loss is $100 million. $100 million.
that's a lot of money right there.
And do you think that those companies are just absorbing that? Or maybe that could be built into the expense of the next train load?
It's got to be, because you mentioned Air Jordans. Where are they made? They're made in China. I mean, how much does it really cost to make them? Probably not that much. And yeah, they're passing that on. They have to. They have to account for this to some degree, and to just pass on the cost to you. Oddly enough, Steve, if I could have chosen to be, I don't know if they were called special agents in 1908 or not, but the false birthday of the FBI is July of 1908, when the Bureau of Investigation was started. And I'm sure that bank robbers, train robbers crossing interstate boundaries was part of the repertoire of the early agents. And who would have thought that in 2025 you could be working on train robbers? I mean, I want to be assigned to that. That would be cool. Let's try to limit these modern era train robbers of all things.
It seems like there could be some interstate crime involved there. It seems like $100 million might be something a federal prosecutor would want to take. I mean, typically, unless you're in one of these very, very big cities, $1 million is the limit you have to bring. So for your edification, folks, for your situational awareness, if you get ripped off, grandma winds up getting snookered out of $60,000 because some jerk calls her up and manipulates her into sending money because he confuses her into thinking that her granddaughter needs to get bonded out of jail, and I'm an attorney, and just make sure that you send it to this. That happens all the time. And then people will wind up, because they kind of realize it, they'll send more money because they're justifying it. And they're saying, oh, no, it's legit. It's legit. So they'll get kind of roped into giving more. $60,000. The FBI is not going to take it.
Nope.
Federal prosecutor is not going to prosecute it. You will be told to go to ic3.gov to submit your complaint, where it goes into a black hole, never to be read or considered again. I've talked to guys that were theoretically supposed to be going into ic3.gov to find their casework if they ever get an opportunity. And they said, no, we have other things we're working on. That's just a data mining operation that's going on. So $100 million, you probably get a squad of agents on that. You know,
Steve, I got to tell you a story about this because this exact thing happened to me. I don't know, maybe a year and a half or so before I got unceremoniously suspended. I got a call. I was a duty agent from some podunk PD. It was a lieutenant just south of Wichita. And it was one of these stories. Elderly woman, dementia, basically turned over her life savings. And it was somewhere around 60 grand. Initially, it was like 35, but she kept paying. And as I would presume any FBI agent would do, okay, hey, we're not going to take this case because, like you said, the threshold is low. And I mean, $60,000 to me, to any individual, just about is not low. That's everything. But I could tell this guy really wanted to do his job. He wanted to do what the police do and find whoever did this. And he had done, to the extent possible, some really good legwork to give me enough information to at least query our systems. And I did. And I ended up as sort of a pet project because I knew somebody who would work this violation wouldn't have done it. I essentially created a link chart, and there were like 12 subjects that I linked all together. And I found out where they were. They were all here coming to school. They were all foreign, and they were all living together. And I forwarded this information on because now with the combination of all these people, we were well over $1 million. And it was in Louisiana, and I forwarded it on, and immediately they played their hand because the guy who got the case was not interested. He was more concerned with getting some promotion in headquarters to go work at the art unit, which I know Cash Patel doesn't listen, but hey, Cash, you should probably just dismantle something like that. I've seen you tweet about it before, Steve. When
Fine Art Friday from the FBI social media team, where they talk about how people just find old artwork in their attics and turn it in. And thanks to us at our hard work at, I don't know, bubble wrapping it and putting it in FedEx, we send it back to the owners.
I know, it's just, it's a travesty because people's lives get ruined over this stuff, and then people, oftentimes law enforcement, federal law enforcement, they don't even help. They don't even do the bare minimum.
Well, Garrett's got a hard out right at 11:30. So I have one more story that I can get to and I can carry the load on. But I want to play this to tee you up to give your thoughts for the day, Garrett, because you talk about Nineveh, which always reminds me of Jonah in the whale. So our palate cleanse is going to preempt the final story of the day because it actually happened IRL. That's a humpback whale for those listening, swallowing a person who's kayaking off the coast of, I think, Chile.
Whoa.
Slow-mo, have it on, and you'll see the tail kick up out of the water in a moment because this is like the Pacific Life commercial. But then he popped out. He lived.
Ya, vente.
Oh
tranquilo, agarra el bote, agárralo, tranquilo, agárralo, no te subas, agárralo.
Isn't that wild?
Dude, that's so insane.
He never buys a drink for the rest of his life, right?
No.
Let me tell you about the whale story.
Oh my goodness. That, I thought he was done. I thought, oh, that's it. This guy, if he's lucky, he's going to get puked up on the shores of some other of Nineveh. But dude, that is wild, Steve. The algorithm for you, I just love it lately.
It's just feed me, man. Feed me. The American Radicals podcast audience is the beneficiary of the crazy things going on in my mind and then the keyboard in my house. So we were about to say goodbye to you. Final thoughts for you today on AMRAD.
Yeah, thinking about the 5 bullet points and what our federal employees are doing, and quite frankly, Steve, for you and me, for us in this weird time, we're getting this a lot. We're getting congratulations. For what? What did we do? What are you congratulating me for? I'm hearing it in my personal life. I'm seeing it online. Don't congratulate me. Okay. I'm not saying that to sound bitter or mean. I've not done anything worthy of your congratulations. And we haven't heard anything. Okay. So, I love the enthusiasm. I love that you all care for us and our families and whatever it is we do. I don't know. I don't really know what it is, but I do know this. Colossians 3, verse 23. Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not from men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ, for the wrongdoer will be paid back for the wrong he has done, and there is no partiality. And I struggle with this from time to time, Steve, because it is really hard in a situation like ours to work heartily as for the Lord and not for men. It really gets tiresome. But I really like the end of that chapter where it says, for the wrongdoer will be paid back for the wrong he has done. God is a just God. Whether we see it on earth or not, he will have his justice for you, for me, for everyone. And he will have his justice with us too, for our own error, our own wrongdoing, our own sin. So I hope that's an encouragement to you as it is to me and to anybody listening. Work heartily as for the Lord and not for men.
And with that, sir, you have a good day. Have a good conversation with people very important in the United States government. That's what he's off to today, folks. We're going to have to play a little coy for now, but hopefully we'll have more to report. I want to get to the last story that I got for today. I know we had the Kyle Seraphin show dump in. I know he was talking to George Hill about it, but I think it's worth just digging into a little bit. And that is this report that came from City Journal about the NSA and the chats that were going on in there about the kink culture that exists. So let's throw this up and I'll read a couple excerpts from it. I'm going to keep it work friendly. I'm not going to get into the specific comments that were made there. I would encourage everybody to go there. Again, this is at cityjournal.org. The NSA's secret sex chats. They talk a lot about kinks there. I mean, Garrett and I talk about our affinity for keeping a to-do list. That's not a kink for the chat that was pushed out there. That's just being productive. The Doge likes people who work off lists. They don't necessarily like people who are using the NSA's internal communication system, which they refer to as Intelink. I don't know. We called it just Link, Lync, at the FBI. It's a messaging program, and all of these chats are recorded forever. So you should always be aware of that. But apparently, because of the rampant DEI, LGBTQ plus AI, rainbow kamikaze culture at the NSA, they didn't have a problem about this. There was no shame. We're not making shame great again. So again, from City Journal, sources within the National Security Agency provided chat logs from this messaging program. The logs dated back 2 years. They're lurid and featuring a wide range of discussion about sex, kink, polyamory, and castration. One popular chat topic was male to female transgender surgery. Sure that we're all paying for that as taxpayers, and they're all federal workers, and they're all on the health plan. According to their sources at City Journal, the sex chats were legitimized as part of NSA's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Activists within the agency used employee resource groups. Now, what you should know about employee resource groups are that they are within the entire government structure. We've mentioned it before, but it's worth bringing again. Prior to Kash Patel becoming the director of the FBI, prior to Donald Trump issuing an executive order that basically said no more DEI in the government, the FBI had advisory groups, diversity advisory groups, 9 diversity advisory groups that reported outside of the chain of command within the FBI directly to the FBI director. Christopher Wray had 9 diversity groups that all had their different pet project. One of them was LGBTQ Rainbow Kamikaze that were directly coming to him with their concerns to make sure their diversity, of course, was a higher priority than rigorous obedience to the Constitution. So this isn't just limited to NSA, but it's just some of the most egregious and salacious information that is part of the City Journal report. Go back to that. According to the sources, the LGBTQ diversity was the driving force behind these employee resource groups. They wanted to turn their kinks into official work duties. Again, the diversity advisory groups at the FBI, that was their job. It wasn't a collateral duty. That was what they specifically spent their entire day doing, as what was going on apparently at the NSA. They spent all day recruiting activists, holding meetings with titles such as privilege, ally awareness, pride, transgender community inclusion. So you can go over there. I would encourage you to do it. That's at thecityjournal.org about the NSA's secret sex chats. And just know and be aware that that's government-wide, or at least it was prior to some of the executive orders. And we should also be aware that big boy rules might be on place here. We might have gotten the directive, but there are still a lot of subterfuge that is going on. There's still a lot of resistance, as Garrett alluded to, the fact that people are going into classified systems and shredding documents, which is illegal. And what's going to be the accountability as it comes to that? So as we wrap it up, we did our palate cleanse, but I do want to make sure I thank a Rumble rant that came in on Saturday. We were derelict there doing that, and that was Peaches 62, because she's got her own credit card now. Hopefully she doesn't max it out on the American Radicals podcast. But as always, we're grateful to you, Peaches, for your contributions. We're grateful to everyone within the AmRad pod audience. So if you haven't already, guys, reminder, please smash the thumbs up and follow the channel. Subscribe if your heart compels you to do that. Subscribe to the audio format. We are going to be done for today. Hope you have a great afternoon. Back with you Thursday, 10:30 here on rumble.com/AmRadPod. Have a great day, guy. Here's my GOB salute for the day. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the voice of the Suspendables on the American Radicals podcast. Follow us on rumble.com/AmRadPod.